Today, we're rebuilding a Shimano Stradic 4000. There's What is up, guys? JT, Resident Dog Fishing, back with you, back in the garage on another project. Today, we're rebuilding a Shimano Stradic 4000. There's the numbers on her. I don't know if y'all can see that. But it's a Shimano Stradic 4000 XG. Found it really cheap. Reason being, when you crank the handle on this thing, it just feels like the gears are just missing and grinding, and I don't know if you can hear it grinding in there. What I found out when I got it back, got it home, and I took it apart initially, on the opposite side of where the handle goes, it's actually this side, because the handle was flopped when I bought it, but there's a ball bearing way down in there. And when I took this apart, that bearing had exploded or fallen apart, however you want to put it, and all the little parts and pieces got wrapped up in the pinion gear and the main spur gear in there. So let's take it apart and let me show you what else is wrong with it. Alright, so let's start by breaking this down. Obviously your handle, got your forward crank, that comes out by grabbing hold of the rotor, spinning it backwards. Take your spool off, just back that out all the way. Using this to hold this down. Now, once you get your spool off, your drag stack just slides right up and off. There's 3 of those. Set those to the side. Now from here, you need a micro screwdriver set. You're going to need a T10 Torx, T6 Torx, small flathead, and this is where the tricky part comes in. In that, where your drag stack is, there's a little itty bitty set screw right there. Forums I've read, it's like a 0.8, 0.9, something like that. But if you have a really small Phillips head, you can get that sucker out. Put a lot of pressure in on it and back it out. I wouldn't recommend doing this on a regular basis, but in a pinch, it works. Like I said, I'm putting a lot of pressure in to get that sucker to back out, and then I use a pair of needle nose, not all the way out. So that's that little set screw. Once that guy's out of the way, this little stack here just slides up and off. You got another washer, another rubber O-ring down there. I like to keep things in a line how they're going to go back on. But you got that off. You got two Phillips heads here to expose your rotor nut. There's your rotor nut. You use a pair of needle nose. This is brass, so everything's backwards. It's not righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. It's righty-loosey, lefty-tighty. Pull your rotor nut off, and your rotor slides right up and off. Set that to the side. This is your one-way bearing here, your one-way clutch, whatever you want to call it. There's 3 screws on top of there. Take that sucker off. So those 3 screws, that metal plate will come off, and your one-way bearing slide right up and off. Set that aside because I'm going to show you what the problem with this is. There's a rubber O-ring there. Slide that off. Slide out that. I mean, you can see how kind of nasty that thing is. But what's even worse is if you can look down in there, look at that one-way bearing. That is absolutely destroyed. Somebody, whoever had this reel before me, hosed it off with water. And this I cleaned up quite a bit, but down inside of here, there was rust. But I cleaned that up already. It's from somebody hosing the reel down with direct water pressure, getting water up inside the rotor, and just getting water all down inside. Also, one thing to be careful on the top of this, when you pull your one-way bearing off, there is an O-ring there. When you have all that apart, your main pinion gear, easy peasy, just slides straight out and off. Boom. There's main pinion gear. That bearing there is also going to get replaced, but I'm waiting on my new pinion bearing to come in. So now that we have that apart, we can work on getting the main body of the reel taken apart. For this, back to your micro screwdriver set. This is where you need your T6 Torx, your real small one. So on the back of the reel, there's a real small Torx screw. It comes out, and this whole plastic piece here slides off the back. Boom, just like that. Once that's off, you have your T10 Torx and then 2 flatheads in there to come off. These are different lengths. The shorter one goes towards the shaft, or the top of the frame. And the longer one goes towards the bottom of the reel. Always keep that in mind. They're 2 different lengths. And one of the differences with the Stradics, as opposed to other reels, at least the base cheap reels that I've always been fishing with and working on, is all the guts, the main bearings and whatnot are usually in the housing where that is. This one, on the other hand, that comes off and there's nothing in there but a bearing, which is going to get replaced as well. It's actually sitting right there on the reel. But this is the other problem with this reel. Slide that bearing off. Is this main gear has just been absolutely brutalized. You can see, I don't even know if you can see where some of it's been just ground down. I don't know if it's from the previous owner cranking on it after that bearing exploded or whatnot, but that's going to get new, replaced. We need to get some washers on top of there. It got to come off. But there is another bearing down inside the shaft on the other side of the reel, where either your handle goes in or your cap goes on. That bearing, that's the bearing down in there that had initially fell apart, exploded, whatever, and destroyed the whole rest of the inside of the reel. That bearing I've already replaced. That bearing's brand new, so we need to get into that. I want to make sure I get all the exploded parts and pieces out. I don't know if that's grease or exploded part or piece. It's just grease. All right, that's as far down as I need to take this reel to replace the bearings, pinion gear, and main gear. That reel's taken apart. Let's see the parts I got. So this is the O-ring that goes inside of here. That was missing. There's another bearing. Ah, this little sucker. This is an O-ring that goes in here that I noticed, or a gasket, grommet, that was missing when I took the reel apart. So I got that. Looks so much better. Cool. So when buying parts for this reel, internet is a godsend. But I looked at two different places. You go to the classic eReplacementParts.com, get anything from those guys. They were more expensive than ordering the parts direct from Shimano. So I ended up ordering the parts direct from Shimano and saved myself like 25 bucks, which is huge when I'm redoing a reel like this. I'll show you what I did to keep in mind all the parts I ordered and keep them organized when they came in. So there's my shopping list: my clutch assembly, the pinion bearing, handle bearing, cap O-ring, or the screw cap O-ring, the body seal, and the main pinion bearing, the prices. Here are the part numbers. I wrote those down next to the prices, so when they came in, I can write down what each one was. Well, that's easy, that's the clutch, you know that. But really, the ones I needed to figure out, I mean, that was pretty simple. It's a very, very tiny bearing. But these two bearings are pretty close. Two different part numbers, so I want to make sure I got where each one of them goes. So there's the parts, just waiting on my two main gears to come in, and we'll throw the sucker back together. All right, package is here. Finally. Brand spanking new. So let's get this sucker thrown back together again. One thing I didn't show y'all, which, there it is, the real tiny bearing. You gotta get that in there. That's actually sitting right here between these two pieces there. Just pop that sucker up. Feed it right through the top. Another bearing. little bearing there. Sit on the bottom of that. And my top pinion bearing is going to go on there like that. I'm going to use this to seat the new bearing in there. Just like that. Make sure that new bearing is seated in there real good. And we'll slide our top bearing right down in there. Make sure that's seated good. New bearing there, new bearing there. Run a little bead around there. Put our new main gear in. Bearing on top of that. Let's put our housing together. These little screws, come on now. My hands are slipping, it's like a grease on them. That's snug. Throw our two torques in. Remember, smaller one goes up towards the reel seat. Go. That's done, that's done, that's done. There's 3 new bearings there. Now we'll get our new one-way bearing in. Just a little grease in there. Make sure that all goes nice. This has a little nub, 2 nubs on the bottom that fit in these 2. So there's a nub there and a nub there that fit into these 2 corresponding holes on the reel there. One thing I forgot was my O-ring. I got this little seat seal, goes on there as well. A rubber O-ring right on top of there. I can put our hold down plate on. Crap, you know what I didn't put back in there? Was that. Son of a gun. Piece I forgot to trip for the bail. That sits right in there like that. That rubber grommet that goes between the two pieces. So this little sucker sits, a little horseshoe shape, sits right on top of where the pinion gear goes through to seal that. So I don't know if you can see it, sitting right there on top of the little housing. There's a little nub bridge that sits on. There we go. Snug and snug. We're back to our tiny little Torx. Put the back cover back on. Alright. Before I forget, I'm also going to put that O-ring on the reel cap, and might as well put it on. So that's sealed. All right, now let's put the top cap back together. That's all my old parts I took out. The rotor goes on. There we go. Get our rotor nut. Remember, it's opposite because it's brass. Put that on there. That will line up our cap for that. Put our two screws in. So there we go. Now put our drag stack back together. Make sure that hole's lined up for your set screw. Again, your real small Phillips. Make sure that set screw is going in right. Make sure that's in and good and flush. Throw our drag washers back on. Spool. Top cap. Put our handle in. And now the true test. You cannot even hear it anymore. That is almost a brand new Stradic. There's my rebuilt reel. and all the parts I took out that were shot. A couple new O-rings. Good to go. What do you think of that rebuilt Stradic? I'm not a professional reel guy. I'm just kind of handy in the garage with tools. I was able to put her back together just as good, if not better than new. Drop a comment in the section below if you got questions. Maybe I can help you out. Smash that like and subscribe button so you don't miss me putting the rebuilt Stradic through its paces on the water. I will see you there.